public hearing.
Because of why?
For what?
So that we can consider a secret.
Oh, okay.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, you want to refer to county, right?
You've got a new submission which includes a revised application, so you should refer to the county planning board for GML 239. They've seen it once. This way you will have a current submission of the revised application, plans.
Kelly sent that up, or we get a copy from them? They sent it directly, or?
Kelly, when you send the county, you send a set of the papers submitted to the planning, correct?
County?
Yeah, GML.
Did we make a motion to do that?
We're getting ready to.
They're just asking what's the process.
Yes, paper copy.
Okay, so you make the submission?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Say aye.
we need a motion to send Mohonk Preserve submittal to the county for review.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask a question to the board and to George. As far as the documentation that gets sent, what do you want sent?
The current submission, they already have what you submitted.
Oh, it's this, right?
Yeah, the submission was made on the 20th.
Everything new that we've done.
Yes. Maybe what you should do in that is just indicate that you have previously submitted. Previous submission set has been provided. This is a new submission which supplements that. So there's no question about whether they ever got the original set of documents.
Any outside documentation up there submitted by the public, anything like that? No? Okay.
Have a motion
Well,
to send to
actually,
county?
let me back up.
Yeah.
I think on Woolbright, we did provide the county planning board with the
Transcript?
transcripts. Or was that the idea?
That was the idea.
Okay, so they had a public hearing was submitted at the end. So this would be just the application and 20 hours with the plans. The applicant submission.
The transcripts, we have them all via email.
You can inquire of Dennis or the
We may not, but it would certainly put the full statement of the proposed action in front of them if they had commented.
Okay, I'll make a motion to send the current submission to Ulster County Planning Board for review.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Trying to think what we didn't cover before.
Right, so I believe we are in the process of looking through part 2 and part 3, or just part 3?
Part 3.
And we're certainly here to answer any questions you have about the project, any questions about our new submittal or any of our voluntary concessions that we've made.
So I have two things, mostly from the public comments, public hearing. Okay, just to jump to, we might have talked about this, but I think Lou Carriola, thanks for staying. I think every time you come, he makes good points. What about this Plan B, which I don't know if we've ever really discussed, but we might have, and I might have totally forgotten. What about changing the angle for the intersection? Is that even, is that a town thing? I don't know how these things go.
Yes, so a number of things from Mr. Carriola's comments I'd like to really agree with him on. One is that site distance easement the town holds over the Jacobs Lane subdivision, which Mr. Marks partially cleared earlier, late last year. He didn't actually go, that easement continues east of Jacobs Lane. as well. And actually, in Mr. Cariola's pictures, you can see that if that was cleared all the way through, it would accomplish some, right, Dan has that, right?
Here.
So, on the right side of this picture, best place to see it is right here. And all those trees are part of that easement, but he only cleared as far as Jacob's Lane from west to east.
What, figure 1 are you talking about?
Yeah, figure 3. If he had continued to the east, he would have been able to eliminate these second growth trees here,
this stuff
which
here.
then makes Jacob's Lane intersection visible as you're coming westbound.
Now, is that easement flagged or anything?
It is.
I mean, not that-
It's a filed map as part of the subdivision.
Yeah.
The other thing Mr. Carriol pointed out is there is a left road entrance sign, but look how far back it is.
I know, it's very far back.
So that would again probably be a county thing. Could they move that sign closer or have a second
I
one?
wonder if that depends on speed limit.
Oh, okay.
Well, we can add this to our meeting with DOT.
Correct, yes.
Well, if you can, right, we're going to
And
discuss
certainly,
speed
we
limit.
would like to affirm our position that we would support a lowered speed limit there. You know, even though we meet and exceed sight distance for the average studied speed out there, which is 60 miles per hour. So part of the problem out there is people are speeding, and maybe what's contributing to the accidents. If we could get it from 60 to even close to the new posted speed of 45, people might slow down out there.
So you're saying your sight distances are good for the speed limit?
Of 60.
But not necessarily beyond. Yeah, because you don't know.
Well,
Good for the 60.
they did them based on 60 miles an hour, which is 5 over the posted limit.
Yeah, so for our site entrances, both driveways, we will exceed the standard site distance for 60 miles per hour.
I
But-
wish Dan was here so we could talk about, or
But you asked about the
Gateway Road,
gatehouse.
yeah.
So at the last meeting, there was brought up that Chris Marks had gone out there. Why don't you guys know better, so you should explain.
Right, it was our understanding that Mr. Marks might be coming to this meeting. We also, agree with the town's position that that intersection would be better if it came to a T. It's not within the bounds of our project, but, if the town needed some land right at the end of our project where the open grass kind of extends to a point there, to square that off to a 90-degree intersection, we'd be glad to donate.
okay, that was my question, okay, great. So it's on us.
So also just to, when we were thank you very much. I had the pleasure and opportunity to actually walk the site yesterday with Glenn and with Ron. And one of the things I also noticed was, in addition to that area east of Jacob's Lane that could be cleared, that there's 2 signs fairly close together, a speed limit sign and a warning sign. And if it was possible, especially if the speed limit was reduced, to reposition that, it would further increase the visibility, the sight line along there.
The intersection warning sign, which is the upright with the light coming out, telling you that there's an intersection.
Yeah, no, I'm actually talking about going the other direction. When you're traveling west to east, there's a pair of signs, and one of them's a little cockeyed. One's a speed limit, and the other one's a diamond-shaped warning sign. And the way they're positioned, they sort of, between that and the foliage, your line of sight becomes very narrow as you look down that way. So if there's a way to move, just, reposition the signs.
Can I just say something? I have the subdivision plan. It looks like the clearing area ends at the east portion of Jacob's Lane. So I don't believe it crosses over and covers the east side.
Okay.
I have the clearing area on the west side. See, here's the clear. That's what's been cut. That's been cut. Right. But it seems to terminate right at the corner.
Right, there is
I'm not
a
sure.
different map that shows the actual easement that the county holds.
Yeah.
Do we have that many chance?
We just have the, from Jacob's Lane west.
Really? So
We don't have
Push to the east.
the east? Okay, I thought that extended.
We don't have that map.
Okay.
I'll have to look on the rest of this portion. I terminated it here myself, and I'll get back to the board.
All right.
Thank you.
After looking at the site, where if we extended, or Gatehouse Road is extended to come out at a perpendicular way, I think it might impact your entranceway, because the distance that you're looking, coming out of Gatehouse, is going to be shortened maybe by 50 feet. And so, you know, I walked the site also, and I have great concern that there's no turning lane. And I feel it's just going to create, and it's not something well, it is something you're creating, but it's not your fault. It's if that, with the speeds, and with the, and with Gatehouse, with Jacobs Lane and the entranceway, I think it's going to compound that issue. It's something that we have to look at. It may not, but I think it really needs to be taken a look at. And I also feel that, you know, that the town should commit to doing the project and rectifying the situation before, you know, as beforehand. So it's not an afterthought after the project's approved, and now we say, now the town says, what do we do now?
Do we have the power to...
I mean, let me just address that. I just want to make something clear here from the standpoint of our analysis of the plans. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I can't speak to the difference in how much closer that road might be. But there is no Plan B. We have not proposed the Plan B. The plan that we have is the plan that's before you, and that plan has to stand on its own merits. It's not a question of us saying we would like to get the speed limit reduced. Everyone, I think, agrees that if the speed limit was reduced, it would be good. But that doesn't mean that the speed limit at 55 is unsafe. I think that the traffic studies bear out that it's not unsafe. I mean, it's been wondrously tossed and examined in a number of traffic studies, and I think that it does bear out the point that in and of itself, the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit is not unsafe, and there's not an unsafe condition there posed by our project in relation to that 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. Would it be better if 45 was the limit? Yes, it would probably be better. But we have to look at this project in terms of the impact we're having with what we're proposing, not on what might occur in the future. We have no control over what DOT does, and we don't have any control over what the town does. But we think that when we look at our project and we look at the provisions that we will make, voluntarily say, yes, if the town wants an easement here, we'll grant it. I think in that context, we can cooperate. But I just want to make that clear, because there has been a lot of what I call speculation and hyperbole by some of the project opponents that just presuppose that this is a dangerous condition, I think, or that the speed limit is a dangerous condition, and that somehow our project is exacerbating that. And I don't believe that any of the studies bear that out. There's been a lot of conjecture about it and speculation, but I think when you look at the studies, it's just not accurate. So I just wanted to clarify.
Well, I think mostly what we're doing is just kind of taking an opportunity to look at this area, even for things that aren't related to Mohonk, and just talk it through kind of in terms of what would be a better speed limit. And, unfortunately, it's using your time too.
It has to affect, going on 299 and having a parking lot and having a slower speed has to be safer. It just makes sense, right? If the speed is slower, and cars are going to have to slow down to go into the driveway, a lower speed limit will be safer.
But that doesn't presuppose that 55 miles an hour is unsafe. That's
But also, you said there's no plan
Just
B, and I
because
think...
something is safer doesn't mean that what's been proposed isn't safe.
But you have to remember when you're looking at this project, it is in the middle of a residential area. And therefore, I'm not saying it's your issue, but part of it can be your issue. Increased traffic can be a part of the issue, whether it be the Mohonk Preserve, Minnewaska State Park, but this traffic study, and I think everybody agrees, it's an issue. There is a safety issue on that stretch of road. And, the way the road is right now, and is that somebody coming up 299 and decides to go off on the gatehouse at 60 miles an hour, and it's been done, and you have a couple of your hikers walking alongside the road and get hit by a car, that's something nobody wants to see. And inconceivably, that could happen.
But, what I'm saying, Tom, is it's not every conceivable impact has to be looked at under seeker. What probable consequences have to be looked at under seeker. And this project has been designed so that the parking area is relatively isolated from the rest of the residential area. I mean, I would say that there's been a painstaking approach to doing that and to helping to eliminate some of the safety concerns with people parking willy-nilly all over the place. There's certainly been some mitigation measures in place that way. And I'm not saying that more mitigation can't be done. I do, and I don't want to monopolize the time here because I'm only a lawyer and I'm not an engineer. But there are mitigation measures that we're proposing, and I know that the board hasn't had a chance to even actually review maybe some of that in the January 20th submittal. But there are additional mitigation measures, which if you'd like, we could have Dan and Ted talk about.
One question I have is your concern about this realignment getting too close to our entrance?
Yes.
Because our distance to the intersection is actually 600 feet right now, plus.
Okay, and now...
So if we're moving at 50 feet, we're really not reducing that distance significantly.
At the current speeds, what's considered a safe distance from an intersection to that?
Typically, you want 300 to 500 feet
Okay.
spacing.
All right.
We're above that.
So, Tom, I wanted to ask you about your suggestion about a turning lane. You're talking about if you're traveling west, a right turn lane in order to move slowing traffic off of the main road.
Get into the parking area.
Is that something that you all, is that feasible with this site plan to even do that to bring turning cars from the right off to the side?
One of your renditions shows it, and the other one doesn't. So...
Yeah, because it was asked at one point, along the way, but...
I mean, you're effectively, like when we were out walking yesterday, Glenn, you talked about once you make the turn, you have a 9-car stacking ability before you get to the visitor center. And what Tom's suggesting would increase the safety margin by allowing cars that are slowing down to move off to the right so that cars that are, traveling through. I don't recall, it seemed to me like there wasn't much of it, it wasn't a particularly steep drop off to the right. It
No,
obviously,
there's a drainage ditch there.
yeah, and it would require,
Shoulder now, so
Yeah.
the fill section.
Now,
yeah, you probably have to bring it up to grade, right, a bit.
another question that was asked of me is left-hand turn coming eastbound into that parking lot. At 60 miles an hour, conceivably, are you going to allow left-hand turns, or is that...
Yes, but we've provided enough sight distance for 60-mile-an-hour condition for a left-hand turn. So somebody approaching from either direction will be able to see going at that speed. See in enough time to react and stop.
What is the sight distance going?
It's 850 feet to the west and 884 to the east.
That seems like you take away 50 feet, it's 550 feet. At, say, 55 miles an hour, that's about 7 seconds if there's no cars backed up to turn right into the intersection. So you get 2 or 3 cars, 4 cars, 20 foot per car, you're significantly diminishing the reaction time of
But
somebody.
we're allowing queuing into, we deliberately.
No, I'm just wondering if it'll wind up being queuing out on the 299 also.
When we looked at,
Can you tell them about you have the,
right, we studied bus traps actually during the peak period 2 years ago. And I can't remember, there was no more than 2 cars, I guess.
For that, so
And actually, the pictures I gave to you before, along with our parking management plan for peak times, show West Traps, which is our most popular 130 cars, at 1 o'clock on a July Saturday in good weather. And there's no stacking at that time.
At what time?
1 p.m., which is our peak
We're up on the
hour.
cliffs already.
Yeah, no, well, actually, the busiest time, there were no more than 4 cars queued up at West Traps. So,
There we don't have as much of a stacking area
It's a speed limit,
than what's
yeah.
proposed here.
so this actually has enough capacity for 9. In addition to that, we've created this pass-by lane, which is intended to be for rangers to be able to pass by lines of cars, but it can also be used as a second.
I mean, somebody pulls up there, you have to pay, I mean, how long does it take? You know?
Well, what we do on
Typical
the peak
car
times-
interaction, you know?
Right. We have a trained trailhead assistant who's a paid staff member, and they will, show your membership or buy a day pass. On peak days, what we have is a second person who's a trained, what we call trailhead ambassador. It's either a staff person or a volunteer trailhead ambassador who's trained. They will allow that wraparound lane to be used as like what we call a speed pass lane. So if you're a member, you just show your membership, you get to park right away, you don't just stop. What we also do with that trailhead ambassador is if someone pulls up and they say, hey, what is this place? I need maps, I need more information. They're not just doing a quick transaction. We say, well then, would you please pull ahead? We have a separate temporary folding table set up with maps, and the volunteer will give that person special attention and give them hiking routes and the like, so that the next car can queue up to the booth. What we also do is the second person on a busy day will go out, especially if we start to see a stacking problem. They'll go out and they'll put the lot full sign out on the public roads. We have a sign it's a temporary sign that says lot full. They'll also use orange cones to make sure people know that don't even pull in. So you might slow down, but they're going to get waved on.
So you're going to have lot full and for east and west bound traffic?
Yes.
Okay.
And we also, we've designed this so people can be turned around. And we also do what we call one in, one out. So if someone pulls up and the lot is full and there's, we tell them you can wait till someone goes out. But if it starts to become a stacking problem, we'll say, we're not going to be able to let you in, one out. So really suggest that you turn around and go back to town, have lunch, spend money, go to the rail trail, go to Water Street Market, and come back when the ridge opens back up at about 2 p.m. And all the trailheads on the ridge start to really be more open for new arrivals. And that's something we currently do at our 4 trailheads, one in Marbletown and our 3 in Gardner.
That's similar to what Minnewaska does too, I think, with the cones and off 30 feet.
Right.
And then you can send them, in theory, you can send people from this to Esbrook House, if you know what's open.
Yes, we also have, all of our trailhead assistants are in radio contact, and they also communicate with our base station at our visitor center. So they're literally saying, sometimes, I got a car here, and another guy's saying, I've got an opening, send them over, I'll hold it for them. So we're really trying to manage so that people aren't driving around the ridge looking for a parking spot continually. where they're not going from point A to point B, only to find that that lot is full also.
How many of your people at these other sites are members versus public people who have to stop and pay?
It can be as much as 75% of our visitors are members, or repeat visitors. Most of our membership is local, Ulster County and a few counties around here. It varies by season. Clearly, in the fall, there's a lot of day visitors from New York City, so the proportion is going to be different in the fall. Maybe early in the spring when you get the first surge of people getting out of the city and the like. But most of the year, it's members who are coming repeatedly. And
What's your projected occupancy of the parking lot?
Projected occupancy.
Projected occupancy?
Length of time?
No, how often is that parking lot going to be full?
Probably 2 days a week, and that depends on those 2 days being a Saturday and Sunday with good weather. The rest of the time, it would probably be less than 50% occupied.
I mean,
If our other lots are an indication.
I think I've gone to all the trailheads in peak times just because of having people coming in or whatever, and I don't ever remember waiting longer than one car length. I mean, more than like a couple minutes. That said, I'd like to say that I really appreciate the willingness of Mohonk Preserve to make so many voluntary changes to this application. And I wonder if we could keep discussing making that parking lot smaller, the main primary one. I think that seems to be a big thing with community members, is just that 90 cars. And I know it was already made smaller, but if it is only going to be full maybe 2 days a week with nice weather in the summer, and the rest of the time maybe 50%, what about 70 spaces?
I think we'd certainly like to, be part of the solution to a lot of the roadside parking that's happening now. Most of it's not illegal because there's no roadside parking restriction, but we're seeing increasing amount of people at the end of Pine Road, at Butterville, at this jamming up this gatehouse entrance now. And we want to build something that, it's certainly not a capacity model. Capacity model would be a much larger parking lot, but we're trying to build something large enough that we can really affect that solution, so that if we build something that's too small and then there's spillover onto neighboring secondary roads, we want to accomplish our objectives. So we're trying to right-size it, if you will. And I think 90 really works. It was originally proposed at about 130.
Yeah,
so it's been reduced by 35% in response to neighbor concerns.
We've also had Dennis Doyle tell us that even at 130, there wasn't enough parking.
Yeah, you said that you indicated 200, county planning originally wanted 200.
Well, county planning says you should build to 80% of peak demand. And none of our lots really have been built to respond to peak demand. They're really built to try to optimize accommodating that portion of the demand that we can, while protecting the resource and not building lots, that are too large or too small, frankly, so that we aren't able to serve enough of our visitors on even those peak days. So we're trying to calibrate, and we came up with the 90, but certainly we can take that into consideration.
I think it's just hard to balance what obviously you see the demand for, and I think we see the demand for, and I think, someone said at a public hearing once, the problem with this project is it's going to be too successful and too great, and balancing that with a 90-acre parking lot in open space right now.
But let's just remember that
I know it's not open space.
The parking lot itself, though, is serving 857 acres of preserved land.
Yeah, I know,
the
I know,
purpose.
but still.
But how much of that 857 acres is accessible from that parking lot?
It's a fair cry.
And
Because
beyond as well.
A resident in the area voiced their opinion to me, and I'll pass it on, is that with 90 cars, 2 people per vehicle, conceivably you can have 180 people on the Oak LA. Now, would you want to walk that Oak Alley with 180 people onto it?
I would just ask you to, see, have you ever been to the what we call the Undercliff Carriage Road on a busy weekend where the rock
Yeah,
climbers
that's
come?
true.
There can be as many as 1,200 people in that area, but because they spread themselves out and people choose different trails, it really does not. We've done studies on people's perception of crowding there, and most people find it's not crowded in their perception.
Now, going back to the perception that you're in the middle of a residential area, is that's the carriage road in a residential area?
It's partially
It's a
residential,
100-acre
but it's also in the middle of a preserved area.
Right, and that's what this resident was stating, is that you stand in the middle of the Oak Alley, and basically three-quarters of that project is surrounded by residential area, where zoning board a few years ago made it that in order to build a house, you have a 3-acre parcel. So, it's...
One of the things we did early on last year was to take a tour with Dave Clouser to look at visibility from all the residences around. And believe it or not, on Gatehouse Road, this, even in the wintertime, and we did this exercise with leaf off, it is so dense in here that you can't even see the gatehouse from Gatehouse Road. In most of this area, the trees are just so dense, you can't really even see the gatehouse.
When you get farther out, you can, but not. In this area, the Smileys planted red pines, Scotch pines, and other pines, and we're trying to maintain the greater residential density is on the north side, where they're mostly 1.5-acre lots, I believe.
You have Jacobs Lane that comes onto the 299 side, and that is visible from your entranceway. So you have a horseshoe surrounding the gatehouse and the Butterfield corridor there. So I'm just telling you, I've talked to various people in the area, and their main objections, A, is the size of the project and where it's located. They're afraid, people I believe are afraid of, and you even admitted it today, trying to guide the people up to the testimonial gateway. Well, they're afraid the Oak Alley gets crowded, you're going to have people going off the property, and you don't have enough people to maintain that. I mean, and you could probably have one-on-one, and you still couldn't maintain it.
Well, actually, this whole project is about trying to channel the visitors to a rational entrance and sequence. Right now, they're actually treating the property like a free-for-all zone.
Yeah, I agree.
And we're trying to mitigate that through a rational arrival sequence, marked trails, interpreted trails, and along Gatehouse Road, for example, we'd like to see a ditch or possibly a very light, rural agricultural fence so that people don't trespass laterally on or off the property.
Tom, are you saying, though, that the people that you've talked to, in terms of the size of the parking lot, would be satisfied with something like 70 cars? Because my read of it, from watching a whole lot of these public hearings, is that there are maybe some members of the public that would say, yeah, 130 cars is good, or yeah, 90 cars is good, or 70 cars may be good. But I think that there are, and I don't think it's a huge number of people, but I think that there are people that no matter what it was proposed that, it would be too big.
I think a large majority of people, including myself, feels it's needed, but the scope of the project is too large. It needs to be downsized for the small area that you're trying to put it in.
In terms of of that parking lot. That's what you're talking
Right.
about.
No,
I just want to flesh out what that issue is, so.
They wouldn't object to moving the parking somewhere else on the property that would still allow the trail to be accessed?
a lot of questions have come up to me. The people have posed questions. I don't have an answer. Why isn't the parking lot down over on Butterfield Road where the large, it's more accessible?
Right. Well, we did study several alternatives, and we actually presented those alternatives to our neighbors in many sessions before we got to the planning board. We brought some graphics of the alternative 6, I believe, or 7 alternative locations that we studied, and we ruled out one by one for visual impacts, for loss of agricultural land, for the fact that they would bring more traffic onto the rural Gatehouse, Butterville Road area, as opposed to keeping it out off of the state highway, Route 299, in a less densely populated area. So those were all looked at. They were looked at in the context of the state scenic byway, and visual impacts. They were looked at in terms of not fragmenting that 50-acre heritage oak forest. They were looked at in terms of some wetland crossings that we didn't want to have to make, and also the impact on agricultural land. So I kind of feel like we've come up with the best location, and I'd like to really, that we did that through a process of elimination.
Good. The parking lot up behind Bonnecue, I forget the name of it, over the
Spring Farm lot?
Spring Farm lot. How many is that?
That's 70.
70. Now, I go there frequently, and the parking lot can be almost full, and you rarely see more than 2 people on the trail. I mean, I think that people do spread out. I don't know, that's just my experience of going there,
And in addition, that's the locus of our events, so there can be 70 cars in that lot, and then another 80 or 90 cars there temporarily for an event up by the Spring Farm Pavilion. But they're of course staying at that event, so they're not really impacting the rest of the site. But yeah, it's amazing the way people spread themselves out. And so, we expect that, people won't come all at the same time. People may stay for a shorter time here. Some people will just want to walk around the sort of historic elements there, take a short walk. Other people will use it, all go through and down into the rest of the foothills. But
What is the distance of the Oak LA?
it is, Ron knows, half a mile, the Oak LA, the distance?
The OKLA from the structure itself to the bridge is a half a mile. So it's a 10-minute walk up, a 10-minute walk back.
So actually...
So if you had 90, if you had 120, 2 people per car, even if you had 4 people per car, you're spreading out 500 people over a half a mile.
It's over 4,000 feet from Gatehouse Road to...
Right, I just don't see that, compared to the walkway over the Hudson. Where you really, you are truly confined, and the distance is, it's probably a similar impact. I don't think people are finding that to be terribly disturbing for use.
I think it's a good point that this is a polarizing project that much like every project, but that not everyone in our community is going to be happy with, and we have to do the best we can. So.
On the topic of parking, I know it's a gravel lot already, and we talked about land banking some spaces in CVS. Is it possible to land bank, in a sense, parking spaces at the parking lot where maybe it's a structural surface that can be used on the weekend, but the other 5 days of the week it kind of looks like it's grass and it may not be used.
That is acceptable planning board.
We love land
We
banking.
want to include all of the necessary
for everyone.
stormwater management facilities and so on.
Yeah, it would be like a true land bank. Like if you think of CVS and you say land bank, there's going to be an area where they pave up to this point, and this area is maybe graded, but it's grass. Here it would still be. I mean, the whole thing is gravel, but there's a section that isn't. It's gravel, but it's I don't know. There's grass, there's weeds, kind of growing up, so it looks a little more natural.
And then if you felt like the parking lot was, so full every day, we could talk about expanding it.
Are you talking about limiting the amount of parking that takes place there, or are you talking about limiting the number of spaces and?
Sounds like it would be something where you would put everybody into the primary parking first, And then when you had an overflow, then you would maybe, I don't know, open something up so that people could move into the other 20% or something.
You did that yesterday. There was an event yesterday, you opened the gate, people parked on the grass, and they were gone, but it's not a permanent parking lot. So, that, something like that.
For a busy full weekend.
Right, because for the other, like you said, the other days of the week, why you're supposed,
So that idea appeals to me more than exactly what Ken's talking about, just because it, as opposed to a developed area where you're trying to reduce the actual amount of impervious surface, the impact here, you'd still be building the same size lot. But if you could actually have a smaller lot with an overflow area that really wasn't otherwise developed, that you could use on those less frequent times, that, I don't know what the calculations were that led you down to 90 from the previous higher number, and I don't know if it's sort of partly a gut feeling based on your experience at other lots and so forth, but one of my impressions yesterday walking around was it felt a little large. I greatly appreciate that you stayed away from the white oak forest, because seeing that firsthand as this relatively, unfragmented except for 299, was pretty dramatic and provides both aesthetically and in terms of a buffer for the houses over on Jacobs Lane. I think it's really valuable. But on the other side, it felt very much like, were this lot to be built, that the impact on Gatehouse was, I think there will definitely be a sense that there's a parking lot over there. I don't know if there's lighting planned for this. I haven't had a chance.
Only till 1 hour after sunset, which is where, day use facilities, there would be, I believe there would be, is it 3 lights?
2 lights proposed here. There's one that'll be oriented over the entry booth.
Okay.
And there will be another one in this sort of reception area.
Okay.
That'll be, I think, 12-foot high LED fixtures.
Right.
Cut lighting directed only where the lighting is needed.
Right. So the parking lot in general is not lit, and then 1 hour after sunset it goes out.
Right.
Just to set the record straight, no flashing lights. Someone.
So, I think if there was partly because it would improve the traffic concerns if you've got a slightly smaller lot except on the high, you've got a reasonable management proposal, parking management proposal with people involved that, clearly can respond to the existing situations. But if there was a way to reduce it and then have an overflow that would, I realize that might not totally solve the problem, but it might reduce the noise and visual impact concerns that...
There was an overflow originally proposed. Back when it was 130 with 30 to 50
Oh, is that right?
overflow.
And the only really reasonable area without fragmenting the oak forest or impinging on the historic site was to use this area, which has since determined to be partially wetland. So
you mentioned that.
An overflow area that, there's some area that's not wetland, but we wanted to kind of keep it south of the historic area as well. And so, we felt that, again, the footprint that has the 90, retains as much trees as possible, but also optimizes all these distance between the historic site, the nearest neighbors, the oak forest, the wetlands on the east side. Well, we could certainly take under advisement if there's either a different, if there's this idea of a reserve area, a land bank parking.
So let me just see if I'm thinking about how to practice this condition or representation. You're saying, for example, of the 90 spaces, say 70 would be typically used, 20 would be a reserve area, which would not be available unless and until some peak demand was met.
Like noon on a Saturday or something.
Right.
If a lot of
So, and the 70 spaces could be located So they minimize whatever impact.
I'd pull them away, if we could, pull them away from the testimonial gateway as much as possible.
Right.
Try to keep that as a more natural portion of the parking area. So is that the concept the board is interested in?
Sounds good.
Is there expansion opportunity at Hasbro?
There really isn't. In fact, I was encouraged that in the redesign of that, to meet the Historic Preservation Commission's concerns, we were actually able to reduce the footprint of that lot and do the same bioswale, same bioretention area, but we added horse trailer parking to that. And so that's a small field, and we're also concerned about the wetland and historic assets there. And so that's only a 20-car lot. It's pretty small, but we really feel it fits in against the edge of the woods there, framed in the back of that field, over the sort of top of the topographical hump there that keeps it hidden as much as possible from Route 299, the state scenic byway. And then we're going to be doing plantings to kind of define that area so that it'll further be screened from public view. So we kind of really want to best pocket that in there if we can.
Is there any best pocket opportunities along Buttonville for 10, 15 cars?
There really isn't. If you look at the alternatives we looked at, we really didn't want to plop a new lot down in that historic cultural landscape where you've got open agricultural fields, you've got all those historical elements coming together. So we can pass this around if it's helpful. But these are the sites we looked at and then eliminated.
Yeah, no, we saw that. No, yeah, no,
Pine Road was another one that I've heard people speaking of.
So that would be, which one's here? This would be...
Well, Pine Road would be up here. It's off the map.
Oh, right.
I mean, Pine Road is currently a public road, and there is quite a lot of unauthorized parking at the end of Pine Road now that we accommodate access onto our land from. So on a busy day, there can be 50 or even more cars up at the end of Pine Road and even coming down Pine Road. And so that is kind of, that's kind of a porous area, if you will. And without a parking restriction there, we're currently managing as many as 50 people coming into the preserve that way. We weren't trying to encourage or authorize a formal lot up there, which would add to our overall parking footprint. We're still trying to stay with the figure of 113 new parking spaces for this whole 857-acre area, plus what's kind of extant with the use of the end of Pine Road.
So in terms of this reserve capacity, do we want it at the gateway lot?
I think that's where it would be best if we did it that way.
It would have to be. I'm not totally convinced it's going to achieve the objective, though.
I don't think it would help traffic.
It's probably, on the busiest days, you're going to have the same amount of cars attempting to come in and out. Yeah, it's going to have virtually the same footprint. I'm not sure.
Well, we know that
It's really gonna
the
do what we
90-car lot and the 20-car lot combined, Dan could remind me, even at the peak hour, we'll put less than 2% traffic on the road, right?
Yeah, 2 or 3%. What's the number?
3%.
So when you gave that number of 3%, that was, I couldn't tell if that was averaged over the whole year or if that was actually at peak times.
Each time.
Okay. I see. Thanks.
But then with the Minnewaska State Park 350 car parking lot, that's not, here again, it's not your issue, but it's going to put a burden on 299 and traffic.
And another thing that we've pledged to do, and we've already started doing, is providing our visitors and working with Minnewaska to try to help their visitors get off at exit 17 and come up 4455 through Gardner, which is good for the Gardner economy. Provides an alternative route, especially when you can't get through the village at the end of a busy weekend day. People are starting to back up on 299. Really letting people know they they can go west and down 209 and out to the Quickway, or they can go down 4455 through Gardner to exit 17. Just that alone, if we could coordinate and, really get that information out to visitors, even exiting visitors, and let people know that there are a lot of different ways. You don't all have to go through New Paltz.
Hashtag get out of town.
Right.
Would that be a sign at your, thanks, come again?
Possibly.
Leave this
It might be better. I mean, what we found
Don't go
works
through New
best.
Paltz.
I mean, it's labor intensive, and it's why, our conservation model, does cost a lot of money. Is we like to put people out there, volunteers, to say, here's some ideas, please, help our roadways. So we've done, we originally, years ago, we started a brochure called Alternatives to the Ridge. We jokingly called it our Don't Go Away Matt, Just Go Away policy. When we were full, we would give out a brochure that said, here's all the great things you can experience in our area, the rail trails, the D&H Canal, shops, Water Street, and it was really, really popular. And what it evolved into is the Chamber of Commerce then printed a supplement to their magazine that was called Exploring Beyond the Ridge. For several years, it was an insert to their magazine. It was a small piece we would also give out, volumes of it, our trailheads. They discontinued that, so we've now kind of put information back into how we orient visitors, both coming and going. We could do more of that, certainly. So a lot of it is really education and helping people make the right choices to not clog the roadways when they leave the site on a busy day. If you could get one or more brew pubs down in Gardner, it would really siphon off the traffic coming into New Paltz.
I don't think you want to take the dollars out of New Paltz.
Yeah, right, that's always the
I don't want to
problem.
take the cars out.
We don't have any good chocolate shops there.
They're going to go to the Sam tasting.
You could change that.
Yeah.
So this is sort of on point. One of the conversations I recall at the town board is you guys appeared a couple years ago. There were neighbors who had complaints about how the site was being managed. I think you expressed the willingness to meet from time to time with the town to explore those issues, ways to manage it. It is something which possibly could be accomplished in the context of this land use activity, so that each year, for example, at Woodbury Commons, there is a quarterly emergency services meeting, which also includes the major shopping centers. They look at how the traffic was handled last year, what sort of issues they had. I think evolved largely out of this 5-hour traffic delay they had about 10 years ago. But you could have something like that with Minnewaska, with the other traffic generators that attract people from out of town. Periodically look at these issues and see how the sites are operating. So it doesn't mean because there's a land use approval that it necessarily ends that conversation. It could be
Yeah, we started a working group with the college, Huguenot Street, and trying to think of the other entities. We invited Bob DeBello from UCAT to come down and talk about, how could the college act as a node on weekends for tourist parking? Could we have a shuttle bus that would limit the amount of trips on the roadways? Could that really be beneficial to the preserve, to historic Huguenot Street, to the college, and welcoming tourists in a different way? So those are all things we're glad to expand, and continue the conversation. See if we can find solutions, mass transit, and other.
so that could be incorporated in your voluntary actions.
Now, what are you expecting is the turnover in this gatehouse lot? I mean, how long do you think people will stay there?
Right. What was the model turnover?
Turnover.
I mean, how many hours? I mean, 2 hours, 4 hours, all day? What are you expecting?
Looks like it anticipated 3 hours. During the peak time.
Since it's almost 11, can we check in and see, Lyle, what's our objective right now? Returning to Michael's question.
Have you, Carol, did you work on the part 3?
Yes, but there were a couple other things. I mean, we can talk about some of it now, or
Do you want to get it out to us and we'll talk about it in 2 weeks, or?
how about I get it out to you at the end of the week through email? Would that be okay? Or even send it to you?
Well, the sooner the better, of course.
Right. But I mean, if our meeting is in 2 weeks, that way we can, we've got some new traffic information, and a couple other things came up today. That way to be more complete. The one last time was substantially incomplete, so.
Okay.
That way you won't have to read it again and again.
That would update what you gave us last time?
Yes, it's much updated.
Okay, great, okay.
Right, but as opposed to giving you, a final, I mean, there will be, of course, a final, but as opposed to giving you another one, we're just going to incorporate a few more comments.
Does that work for you? And that gives us a chance to look at what you sent the 20th?
Sure.
I know you sent it the 20th, but most of us don't read it until today.
I actually have not had a chance to read that one as well, so I want to make sure that we're still online.
What I gave you tonight, I had given you informally what our parking management plan is. Tonight I put that in a memo to the board and gave pictures of that July 25th day. So that's kind of, I'm hoping that you'll accept that tonight as an addition to our package.
Okay. The other question I had for you is, I know there's no Plan B, but are you guys able to assist the town in straightening that road in any, I mean, I don't know what he needs. Maybe he doesn't need anything except the right of way to do it.
We were waiting to hear from Mr. Marks.
Yeah, I think, have you spoken with Chris?
Yes, I've had some conversation with him last week, and I sent him a concept of a kind of worst-case condition in the sense of this is the most straight you could get it. He has an opinion that you could do less than that, maybe within the existing pavement, and have some improvement. So I think there's some middle ground in that area. And I think it was discussed that there was some property there that if the preserve donated that to the town, or if that became part of the county right away, that would help facilitate that improvement, particularly if it was the most straight that you could make it.
Right.
If it was just a little straight, then you wouldn't need as much land.
I mean, our goal would be to retain as much of the existing woodlands there and to not go any farther west so that we'd impinge on that little wetland area. But there's a long sort of triangle of open grass that I think that whole area, if you could use as much of that as possible and bring it to a T. It was also suggested to us that, I forget who suggested this, that if it wasn't a long 90-degree angle, in other words, if people did have to slow to turn to a 90-degree angle, that would be potentially safer, because people would slow before they get to the stop.
Yeah, I drove through there tonight, and I could easily drive off 299 at 45 miles an hour. So I think there's
oh, right, from east to west, you have to take a pronounced right turn into the site with a new island there of some sort. And then coming from Gatehouse, if there was a turn to a stop, with enough stopping distance, it would still be a 90-degree angle, but it wouldn't be a long, you wouldn't necessarily want to straighten out Gatehouse like cutting off a big chunk of our site.
Right.
Because you'd get into wetlands for one thing, and you'd start to impinge on the historic landscape.
I spoke with Chris, and I think the way he described it to me is where that rock is. That would be where the entrance would be.
That's right here.
Yeah, we'd be glad to cede that land, whether it's in fee simple or by easement, whatever the town or county gets right with me.
It also, it gives you the potential, depending again on how straight you make that, to use that existing pavement or that existing area over there to actually create kind of a right turn decel lane. So those who are getting on to Gatehouse, traveling westbound, you can use that kind of existing roadway as it is now to slow and then make the 90-degree right turn to come on to Gatehouse Road. So I think there's some options there to explore, and I think...
So we certainly wanted to affirm our cooperation with those strategies.
Okay, no, I just don't like it to keep going along as Plan B when there is no Plan B. It's just
Is the Plan B, is that from the 2013 public meeting when
Right.
a couple
There
of...
was an original idea which was resoundingly rejected.
There was a 1A and 1B.
All the neighbors on White Oaks Lane and Gatehouse to connect to White Oaks Lane by cutting across our site.
Right.
With a road that people describe as very suburban. It was roundly rejected and removed from our plan. And at that time, it was what was called Concept B in our plan. We heard the neighbors at those meetings loud and clear, and I think they may have been more weighted towards, the neighbors on the north side. And so they didn't want something that would bring more traffic onto Gatehouse, over onto White Oaks, or anywhere on the north side of the site, which are really secondary roads, tertiary roads. And so that's what led us to try to find alternatives that, would be closer to the existing intersection design, but try to move our access away from that intersection, away from Gatehouse, away from the historic road that made this intersection so complicated.
So why don't we put you back on the calendar for the 8th?
Great.
And, I don't know if everybody has to be here. I don't know what you want to do, just some representation, and we'll try and go over the part 3.
Very good.
Ken may or may not need to be there. If there's something, is there any traffic issues that you would like him to address tonight? Since he's here, it's a great chance to close up on
I think we had a pretty good...
While you're thinking, I can fill you in a little bit about the speed limit.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
the question.
So, do you guys want it to keep?
You get overtime?
So there was...
No, you have to keep it on. You have to
We'll be done in a few minutes.
Yeah, I think we have to, or else we have to shut down, yeah. We'll talk fast.
Okay. I spoke to the county about the speed limit issue, and the process is that the town board approves a resolution requesting the change, and they put together any supporting documentation that they can that would justify it or substantiate why they're asking for it. That then goes to the county, and the county reviews it. There's another form that gets filled out. And if the county reviews it and says, yeah, we think that there's merit here, then they pass it along to DOT. And then DOT's engineers will take a look at it and do some more due diligence, speed studies, engineering studies, whatever they need to. I think the accident analysis here would help substantiate or push that along, more so than just anecdotal complaints that, oh, people are speeding through here. So putting that together to the town board level and then to the county and then to DOT is kind of the process.
And that would typically take
20 years.
6 months, a year?
That is a good question. I don't think it would be any quicker than 3 months.
Okay.
I doubt that it would go out, particularly in the wintertime and do, a lot of study,
Sure.
but, 3 to 6 months could be an average.
It starts at the town board.
Correct, yeah. I think it would take somebody to help draft what the draft resolution would look like or present it. I don't know what that process would be to get it to onto their agenda, but they would be the first action to move it to a higher level.
Is it the sense of the board that regardless of whether this application was going to go forward or not, you believe that would be a good recommendation from a safety traffic management standpoint?
I was under the impression we did it already. I thought we
That already started. I thought so too, yeah. The wheels are already in motion.
Yeah.
So maybe I can work with Ken to draft the resolution.
That we could recommend to
From the
them?
planning board to the
That'd be
town board.
great.
That would be
Something
great.
that the town board can say, okay, we like this, send it on.
Okay.
That's great.
That would be great. Do we need to vote on that, or?
A quick question about that right-of-way that has been maintained to increase the site distance to appropriate levels. Who maintains that?
The town highway department.
The town highway department?
Well, the town has the right to maintain it.
Oh, okay.
I think that comes out is, given that it's necessary to maintain the site distance for the access, whether Mohonk would be willing to
Well,
share that.
it was originally a condition of creation of Jacob's Lane because Jacob's Lane couldn't meet site distance requirements. So it's an easement imposed on the site plan of Jacob's Lane. It was cleared by Mr. Marks after one of the accidents at Jacob's Lane early last year. Just a car that couldn't see left going out of Jacob's Lane because of the skewed sight line to the west. So I'm not sure we're prepared to say we'll take sole responsibility for
Not
it.
necessarily sole, but, perhaps joining the sheriff.
Well, would that be one of those items that comes up at that periodic meeting of the minds? to
Well,
determine what-
right now, the site distance was not adequate. It was then cleared, it was adequate for your purpose. So I think it's something where you might have some, not obligation, certainly a desire to share and maintain that.
That's something we can talk about with, as I think probably George may know, Paul Keller does a lot of Mohonk Preserve's general work too, and I'd like to talk to Paul because he's a lot better versed in tort law than I am. I think it'd be good to see what he says about that.
So previously it was the exclusive benefit for Jacob's Lane, but now it's going to become a mutual benefit.
So does that mean that means there's like a homeowners association or something? I don't know what the condition. I don't know what the terms of the condition were.
I don't think it's thought through.
Okay.
It's part of the site plan.
Is there an HOA?
I'm sorry?
Is there an HOA? A homeowners association?
It was never formed.
Yeah,
It was supposed to be, it was never formed.
Okay.
There's no HOA.
You could
So,
ask Phil how much work it's got on.
I see. Okay.
It sounds almost like that even if you guys were monitoring it, like if somebody could call up and say, hey, it's been a year or two, like this is getting a little high.
No, I really appreciate it.
I mean, sometimes the highway department doesn't realize that things have grown up. They have 700 miles of roads or something. And
I mean, I met out there with Mr. Marks and kind of showed him the sight line and explained it to him. And he said, okay, I'll get back to you. And the next day, his guys did it. They were
It may
amazing.
not be a big deal for the highway department. It's also, how much you have to contribute if it's.
The sideline was for Mohonk Preserve. So you could see coming around that turn, that possibly you could see the entrance to the parking lot. Frankly, it wasn't necessarily for Jacob's Lane.
The parking lot?
Yeah, the entrance, because as you come around the turn, you're going to have a blind spot, you're almost on top of the entrance into the parking area. Now, probably the accident at Jacob Lane was probably contributed.
Are you talking about the proposed parking area?
Yeah, proposed parking on 299, the entrance.
There's an existing site easement, which is presumably to maintain site distance for traffic coming from Jacob's Lane.
Well, it was primarily coming from, on 299 going west. To turn there, in order to get a site for the entrance to the parking area.
But
that makes a big difference. It helps considerably.
It does do that, but that's not the original purpose, as I understand it. So, okay, we don't need it.
And I just want to point out also that this highway study said that the gatehouse area is 8.8 times, over in a 5-year study, 8.8 times the average for that type of intersection in the state of New York.
Yeah, but can we
No, it's
explain,
not safe.
can we explain
Hold
what
on,
that
I don't think we want to
means?
get to it.
Can we have, but really, can we have the traffic engineers explain what that means? Because I'm hearing a lot of things about 8.8 times is likely, 8.8 times over what? And what is the effect of that from a safety standpoint? That's the question that has to be answered. And I think that has to be answered within the context of traffic studies, not what we think might happen. And that, you're the engineer. You talk to that.
So, Mr. Morial, you referenced that in your statement earlier, that we have traffic studies.
Correct. But I'm willing to, I was willing to allow a little bit of back and forth here. It's not a public hearing. It's really my client's time to speak.
So, yeah, we compiled all the accident data. The intersections and the corridor are above statewide average rates, and whatever they are, each one is different. They're all above X amount of times above.
How do they come up with the statewide average rates? I think that's really, what are we comparing? Are we comparing apples to apples? I mean, how is that, what is that based
It's
on?
DOT, New York State DOT compilation of data. So
They present a book, or there's so many, if the angle of the intersection is such and such, it's an accident.
Comparable facilities, so arterial or a two-lane road, three-leg intersection, four-leg intersection, and you compare this facility meets this criteria, and it's the accident rate that they've collected for the state.
And the data that goes into it is aggregated to this, in the sense that it doesn't break down the data to say, give me only the intersections that are three-leg, that have an extreme angle, that are 55 miles an hour, that have a stop sign on the side road. It doesn't get into that level of detail. It really puts a lot of stuff into one pot and says, I have an intersection that has a stop sign and it's in a rural area. And it doesn't get much finer than that.
And it gives you the starting point. This is where we're at now. Compared to this average data, there might be an issue here. The next step is what Ken was getting at. Are some further investigations needed here, which would be looking into more finer details of why is this happening at this
It
location.
sounds like the 8.8 doesn't mean a whole lot. It means there's something
Well,
there. but-
it's pointing out the fact that something should be investigated further on why, as a whole, this is happening.
Because I question, does it factor in population density at all? So,
I don't believe so. Yeah, urban to rural.
So that's considered a rural road
Yes.
compared to somewhere that's really rural, like a very rural county.
So to take this data and really determine whether it's the angle of the intersection, it's the speeds, it's the sight distance, you have to get to the level of the accident report that Edward or Lou had submitted. That level, you could read exactly what the person was doing, what the first vehicle was doing, what the second vehicle was doing, and the circumstances that kind of surrounded that. At that level, you can really decide whether it's the angle of the intersection that's the problem, or whether it's the sight distance. At this kind of aggregated viewpoint, you can really only determine that there may be a problem here that is worth, additional investigation. But it's hard to define those exact details.
Nearly 40% of the accidents are animal-related.
Yeah.
We just looked at the accident report Mr. Carriola submitted, and it's actually two cars both traveling on 299, one trying to pass the other. So it was not a perpendicular intersection-related accident at all.
And Dan, total numbers, can you just quickly speak to total numbers over the 10-year period that we're talking about?
Total accidents?
Yeah.
We did over the 5-year period.
Over the 5-year period.
542 is total accidents, and so, all right, 142 total accidents.
You did tell us, he read that to us.
Okay.
Yeah, you did read that to us, yes.
I'm sorry.
But basically, what we presented the baseline data, so we know what, starting here, what the accident rate is for the intersection for the corridor, what our impact is going to be. Against that accident rate, we're looking at 3% or so increase in traffic. But since it's an accident rate, that additional traffic flow might produce a small 3% increase overall. That's not going to affect that accident rate. So the comparison to that statewide average, that rate, that baseline is always going to be there.
So 3% of 8.8%, you're talking about a small increment increase that we might expect.
Right. The other piece of information we just inferred about.
George made this suggestion earlier today to me. Glenn will fill you in on what we plan to do.
Right. We'd like to provide you with accident data for all the preserve trailhead ingress and egress points to a public road. We think we don't think there are many accidents.
Can you get me the Washington? Because that's where I've been telling you.
If the county has it, then we don't have to get it from original research.
I would rather us stick with our own data rather than get into Minnewaska.
Minnewaska has a lot of higher volumes, and that's the.
And it's a different situation too. The whole thing is different.
Is that 3% just based on number of cars increase, right? So there's nothing to do with the fact that now all these cars are going to have to stop to go into a parking lot, and a lot of them might get rear-ended. That's not part of what the only thing you're counting is the number of cars, right? You're saying there's going to be a 3% increase based on the number of cars traveling, not so much the condition in which they will be traveling.
Sure, we're also providing ample sight distance for those cars following to stop to have ample time to stop from 60 to 0.
So it'd be worse if they were proposing an angled intersection with, no sight distance, one lane in and out. Those would be the circumstances that would probably create an even higher, accident rate.
Well, I'm just saying that 3% is just based on the number of cars driving by.
Correct.
And nothing else taken into account.
I think you're taking offense that we're trying, everybody agrees that it's an issue. And even if Mohonk Preserve wasn't there, the same accident rate would be the same. And you got to look at the human aspect of it. It's great to play with statistics, but if you happen to be in the car that gets broadsided by the guy going 55, you really don't care about the statistics. And I think everybody's just looking at this as a safety concern, not Mohonk's fault, not anybody's fault. It's an issue it's common to that intersection.
Absolutely, there's clearly a high accident rate in that whole area, and we'd like to show that our ingress-egress points along.
I think that would be a good idea. I think we'd like to close tonight and see you guys back on that 8th.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We need to I would make a motion to have George send a draft resolution to the town to get the speed limit reduced.
So prepare it for our review.
And
then we can vote to send it on. Yep.
I make a motion to have our attorney George prepare a draft resolution to send to the town to request lowering the speed limit on 299 from the flat to past the Hasbro Council, place like that.
And there may be options.
We may have to think about which one over here. And then we'll have a draft resolution we can look at next. So do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
You say this is
Okay, all in favor?
Steve.
Aye.
Do we have to deal with, we have to extend the request for an additional 90 days?
I'll make a motion to extend the Taliaferro application for 90 days.
Second.
Great. They're looking for a land trust. Good, we should give an example.
Is this in the...
Any other discussion?
Oh, I just want to say one.
Aye.
Oh, no, it's not about that, sorry.
So, I'm happy to postpone the code discussion.
The definition.
Yeah, I just want to see if we can agree to send something up to the town, but I realize it's very late. We can...
Let's talk about it another time, and you saw George's comment about the different eras that these laws were written.
Yeah, that's all fine.
I mean, not to mean that it shouldn't be uniform, but it's probably a bigger task than we imagined.
No, I actually think it's a very simple task.
Well, the point is, we'll discuss it
No, I
next
think
time.
it's really just a simple word.
The point is, we're putting it to our next meeting.
But if you want to...
Wild language, all the things that...
If you want to, if we can postpone it, but maybe we could do it earlier in the evening.